That's the thing about life. It can be unpredictable, but your dreams need not be. How far would you go to make your dreams come true? How close are you to reaching those goals set by you? While others focus on a new normal, you focus on a new beginning. Look around for what inspires you. Build your narrative. After all, it's your story to tell. Take a chance. Take a leap. Begin your study abroad journey with us.
Looking for the right course for you? Welcome to AECC Global's Course Search, your one-stop platform for all your international education needs. Browse through millions of free, valuable study abroad resources to pursue your international study dream. To begin your search, type in your preferred course in the search bar. Filter by sub-course category, level of study, destination preference, tuition fees, duration, and post-study work visa. With a destination drop-down, you can search for the preferred destinations of your choice. You can also filter down courses by top-ranked universities in your preferred destination and their rankings. Browse through various career choices, and you can also browse through free student resources like articles on tips to study abroad, the latest news, etc. We are here to support you with every step of your study abroad journey. To explore your course options, visit search.aeccglobal.com.
Oke, selamat sore teman-teman AECC. Selamat datang di live webinar session AECC Global hari ini dengan University of Surrey. Nama saya Lani, AECC Global, dan saya akan menjadi host pada sore hari ini di sesi berjudul Hospitality and Tourism, Pre and Post-COVID and How the Industry is. Maaf, background suara saya agak keras karena tadi ada emergency sehingga saya nggak bisa cari tempat yang lebih sepi saat ini. But nevertheless, bersama dengan saya hari ini kita punya our guest of honor tentunya, yaitu Profesor Tussyadiah dari University of Surrey. Prof. Iis, welcome to our platform today and thank you so much for being available to share with our friends today. In the background, kita juga punya Isabel van Huysen, who is the regional officer dari Southeast Asia di bagian marketing, recruitment, and admissions. Okay, before we begin, sedikit mengenai Profesor Iis Tussyadiah. Beliau adalah profesor of Intelligent Systems in Service dan juga Head of School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at the University of Surrey. Professor Iis conducts research on digital transformation in the travel and hospitality industry, focusing on human-computer interaction, consumer behavior, and mobility. She investigates the applications and implications of intelligent systems in the service sector to inform business practice and policy. mendapatkan PhD in Information Sciences dari Tohoku University di Jepang pada tahun 2006. Sebelumnya, Profesor Is juga menyelesaikan Master of Engineering in Industrial Engineering and Management dari ITB pada tahun 2002. Okay, so without further ado, kita mau serahkan screen kita hari ini, sore hari ini ke Profesor Is. Silakan, Profesor.
Well, thank you very much. Selamat sore. Good morning. It's morning in here, and I apologize. My computer is acting up this morning, and so I'm using my iPad, and hopefully I'm able to actually have some rain coming up. And so I was given a topic to talk about tourism and hospitality pre and post COVID, and how we can bounce back. As mentioned earlier, I'm doing research technology in hospitality and tourism. So I'm going to try to focus on that area. What will be the roles of in taking the industry to bounce back after COVID. But before I go into the discussion, so hopefully I will be able to share my screen. Again, I'm working on the iPad, so I'm hoping that I will be able to do this. Probably introduce a little bit more about the school at the University of Tourism Management at University of Surrey. This is we are the first in the actually off free in hospitality management and tourism management. And we offer a master's program and also PhD programs. So we offer 4 undergraduate degrees now. So we have international hospitality management, we have international hospitality and tourism management, and then we have international tourism management and international event management. And we also have a specialized one, which is the international tourism management with transport. And then at the master's level, we offer international hotel management, strategic hotel management, international tourism management, international event management, and then the 2 specialized ones, which are the international hospitality innovation, which we also offer, and then another one on colleagues or students who are planning to go into the aviation industry, airlines, airports, and so on. And then we have a PhD program where we actually have about 60 PhD students in the school. So we're one of the largest PhD programs in the world, offering hospitality, tourism, and events management. So that's who we are. And I'm also for people-centered artificial intelligence. Institute for interdisciplinary research on artificial intelligence, vision, speech, and processing, which is basically our AI center. At the university level, what in this area is to make sure that the development of artificial intelligence consider people. And that's what we are trying to do. So that the school, and I'm doing research on the intelligence. I'm now to share my screen. I don't know if I can do this. Screen. So let's see. Well, if I cannot share my screen, I'm going to share with you my my presentation. So I'm going to try to talk through. I apologize because my computer somehow is acting up. To talk about the roles of artificial intelligence in hospitality and tourism. So as you are aware, the industry is one of the strongest, most, how can I say, the fastest growing and in the world. Essentially, it makes up the most in terms of GDPs in many countries, and it's also one of the how can I say, the most important economic economic that makes up many countries, including developing countries, in terms of growth and development. So it's quite while we all understand that actions that come with the pandemic means that we do have restrictions, really significant negative influence on the tourism industry in many parts of the world. But actually, from the growth and the point of view of development of the industry going forward, this was really I wouldn't say a good incident, but it's we can look at it as a good opportunity for us to think about where the industry to go. And obviously
you are
concerned about will students still be interested in our subjects, for example, considering that there is uncertainty around the future of travel and hospitality. However, I'm doing research in this area, and we went in the first lockdown. We working with industry partners and also with government agencies, look into what's going to happen in the next 2-3.
Profi is you are lagging, so either your connection is not good or our connection is not good. But I think your connection is not good, so we can't really hear you smoothly.
All right. Okay. So sorry about that, but I'm going to try to continue. But I'm in spot actually at home, but I'm not sure where I left off at. Anyway, turning off the video. Yeah, I'll try to turn off the video. Hopefully that will help. There we go. Let me know if you still cannot hear me. I was trying to say that when we went into lockdown and we had concerns about the future of travel and hospitality, we actually we started working with the industries and also with a government agency to see how we can set an agenda so that when travel comes back, we will go into the right direction. And for me, that is to ensure that we practice more responsible tourism and hospitality going forward. And so before the pandemic, we were facing issues, for example, with overcrowding, over tourism, and we're trying to find ways to manage tourist flow and basically how to distribute wealth, so to speak, from tourism activities, right? And so that's when my research came into place, because what we are trying to do is creating smart systems to allow managers, whether it's at the destination level or the regional or national level, to be able to manage the flow of tourists, to avoid overcrowding, and to actually distribute more tourists to areas where they need tourism, for example, for development. And that's when AI came into place, because we're dealing with big data in terms of number of tourists, or for example, social media data, what people are talking about in terms of experiences in a particular region, and so on and so forth. So that was before the pandemic. So during the pandemic, what we tried to do is to look into, okay, what happened in the past? What are the pain points, so to speak, the negative impacts of tourism in regions and at destinations, and moving forward, how can we actually deal with it? But obviously there was a trade-off, during the pandemic. On the one hand, we know that this is a chance for us to look into the future and plan for a better industry. But on the other hand, many businesses were struggling, obviously, because of the closure. And so they are trying to survive, basically, because the connection between the products and the services that they offer and the customers are being cut. You don't actually have that bridge between your products and your services to customers, because people don't travel anymore because of the restrictions. And so what happens then is, so there are two things to me that were very important during the pandemic as a lesson. One is the industry started realizing the power of technology in helping businesses to survive. And that includes also in tourism and hospitality, and particularly in hospitality. And I think it's the same in Indonesia, for example, with lots of food delivery platforms and transport ride-hailing systems, for example, like Gojek, for example. And so these are the areas that that everyone, so most small businesses in hospitality and travel that we spoke to or we worked together with, realizing the platforms are have been here for a long time, but I think how can I say, they didn't realize the importance of using these platforms before, but the pandemic actually made them realize that, one, the migration or the adoption of the platform is not as difficult as they thought previously. And two, there's actually a need to do it. So it's technology has been seen as something novel, something that's nice to have. Before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, many businesses realized that technology are essential. So lots of the platforms are essential for them to survive, whether it's to connect them to customers through different ways of offering their services, so turning digital, or to maintain the connection with their employees. And so, for example, many employees from the hospitality and travel business furlough, so they don't work because they, everyone needs to stay home. And so there were sudden needs for business owners and for organizations to maintain that relationship with their employees when they are not at work, and that also where digital platforms play a role. So from these, actually, the positive side of these has been lots of innovation happening in the digital space within travel and tourism, as well as hospitality. So as I mentioned earlier, lots of, for example, meal kit and food delivery system, and different ways of restaurants and hotels are engaging with happening during the pandemic, things that they didn't, so busy with the operations, or the operations worked well before, and technology hasn't been in the equation. which was very promising. And I think that's also from the educational point of view, that's the direction where the industry will go. And so that's why we decided to launch this new master's program in international hospitality management with digital innovation. And that is because we see this would be the future the industry, that many of from the operational and strategic point of view, the industry is going into the direction of more and more, how can I say, digital integration into their management and into their operation. So then we start, thinking the big picture, obviously. So so what I was talking about, the operational side of things, kind of the short need for many businesses, to survive, to basically still make customers or not. If we try to start to look into the big areas of from the pandemic, so the closure of businesses and making sure that businesses are more resilient in the future, because obviously this will not be probably the only shock that the industry similar, but other shocks might happen. And so there is the importance for us to think about how in the industry for better tourism economy, we need to ensure sustainability aspect of tourism is priority. Whether it's again at the national level, at the regional level, at the destination. So to me, first of all, business resilience, sustainability in it, that would require different ways of us to manage tourism. And then 3 is around tourist itself. So it's better understanding of what customers would want from.
You're actually disappearing, Prof.
Right. So when we now.
Yeah, you're actually disappearing just now. Maybe it's a connection issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I mean, I can hear you clear.
Okay.
And then you are being cut off. I mean, you just disappear. Your voice, I mean.
Okay.
But it's okay. Go on.
Oh, sorry about that. But actually, my connection is quite strong, but I don't know what happens. Anyway, I'm not sure. For Brazil, sustainability is being changed.
I think we've lost you again.
Obviously, people, oh, really? I'm going to try to leave, and then I'll connect again. I hope that would work.
That would be good. Yeah, let's try that. Maaf teman-teman, mungkin koneksi agak nggak terlalu bagus di sana. However, Prof. Iis akan kembali lagi bentar lagi, so just hang on for a while. Jadi beberapa hal yang disampaikan during the pandemic, tentunya chance to look into future and plan to survive ya. Karena during pandemic benar-benar industri hospitality ini boleh dibilang sangat terpukul. Karena banyak sekali negara-negara dengan restriction di mana kita nggak bisa masuk juga ke negara-negara tersebut. Sehingga this kind of industry benar-benar berhenti sama sekali untuk mungkin 1 tahun ada kali ya. Namun sekarang berangsur-angsur pulih karena border sudah terbuka lagi, sudah mulai dibuka di mana-mana. Oleh sebab itu tentunya industri ini sangat optimis untuk plan ke depannya. Isabel, do you want to remind the audience what sort of programs do you have?
Right.
Hospitality and tourism?
Yes. So if you're looking for a postgraduate program, we have international events management, international hotel management, international tourism management, strategic hotel management, air transport management, and as Professor Is mentioned earlier, the new one is international hospitality management with digital innovation. I think she's back.
Hi, I'm back. Sorry. I hope this would work better.
Yes, we can hear you now. I think it's clearer now.
Okay, great. So I'm closest to the source of Wi-Fi, so hopefully that's not going to interfere. Anyway, so I was talking about the 3 things that I think that they are important as a lessons learned from the pandemic. 1 is the importance of business resilience. 2 is the importance of tourism management for sustainability. And then 3 is the areas of behavior change. And so looking into consumers. So I was about to elaborate on that consumer side of things. So I think the one thing that we've learned during the pandemic in terms of people's behavior with regards to travel, there was a big hope, so to speak, that people will learn, from not being able to travel during the pandemic, that their preference perhaps for travel will change in the future. And so people were conditioned that travel is not easy. So there's a lot of restrictions, a lot of requirements for us if we are traveling. It's still in place in many countries. Obviously, we have to quarantine, to have a test and a vaccine passport and things like this. But also there was again a hope that people will learn how to how can I say how to travel in a smarter way in terms of being safe and keeping each other's safe, after the pandemic. And so there's a lot of movement in terms of how can we educate. Educate is probably a big word here, but how can we raise more awareness to facilitate people to travel more responsibly in terms of perhaps not traveling too much, perhaps going to areas that are not too crowded, right? And lots of things that hopefully will contribute to a more sustainable tourism. So at the beginning of the pandemic, of the lockdown, we've seen different areas where we think that it's going to change travel patterns. For example, many tourists prefer to stay in rural areas instead of urban areas because there will be less people. There will be a lot more things to do, for example, with family and things like this. We've seen also changes in the ways that people choose accommodation. So at the time, I think people less willing to stay in big hotels, but they tend to rent a house for a family, for the family and so on. People start traveling longer because at the time kids are not going to school, for example, and we can work from home. So there are all these changes happening. The question becomes whether this is going to be a long-term patterns in terms of consumer behavior. So I think this is critical because to be honest, in many research projects that we did in terms of consumer behavior, we know that whatever happens in the future, travel will still be one of these, human nature, how can I say, human needs that comes naturally. So people will still like to travel, and so travel will not go away. It's just the ways that people travel what might change going forward, and hopefully that will be, towards a more positive, more responsible behavior. So from these areas, I'm looking at the resilience of businesses in tourism and in hospitality, and how can we build resilience? And from my perspective, that would be also the integration of digital transformation in the industry. And two, how can we make tourism more sustainable from the management side of things? And so how can we allocate resources, and influence demands, for example, to make sure that tourism will not grow into a state where it's going to affect negatively to the destination. And then three, how can we influence consumers to still travel, but travel more responsibly, and that could mean many different things in many different destinations and settings. So from this perspective, from the school at Surrey, we've been involved in many projects around developing tourism and hospitality to bounce back after COVID, and particularly looking into these three areas as well. So in the school, we have three research centers. One is looking into competitiveness of the visitor economy. So this is basically looking at how can we forecast demand more accurately, for example, and that's when AI comes into place as well. And then looking into innovation in the industry. What are the factors that need to be there, so the industry can be more innovative in the ways of creating new products, services, or reaching into or tapping into different market, and so on and so forth. So that's the first center that we have. So research in the areas of tourism economics, innovation, and so on. The second center that we have in the school is the Center for Digital Transformation in the Visitor Economy. And so within the center, we're doing research on many aspects of digital technologies and how we can adopt digital technologies in tourism, in the industry. So it ranges from artificial intelligence, robotics. We have service robots that we do experiments with, to make sure that when we apply automation, for example, in restaurants, in hotels, or in other hospitality businesses, that we implement the technologies in ways that will actually improve not just the customer experience, but also the resilience of the businesses. And we also, we have a digital lab where we have biometric equipment. So we have, eye tracking. We have a galvanic skin response where we actually measure people's sweat, for example, to gauge their emotion in terms of their reaction to certain things. So that's what we do in the Center for Digital Transformation. And specifically for the three areas that I mentioned earlier, what we are trying to do in the Digital Transformation Center is not just thinking about digital transformation in terms of application of technologies in the industry. We are actually also focusing on the people. So again, we're trying to to look at how when we develop or apply new technologies, that people needs to be the center of it. So we're looking more into digital dexterity. So it means that how ready is the industry to facilitate the combination of machines and people working together, whether it's in the settings of service or in situations where consumptions are happening. So, for example, if we are looking at automating service tasks, let's say, in the airports, we have kiosks, right, where we go and get our tickets and things like that. That's automation, and we are used to doing this. But then if we implement that in other situations where typically human-to-human interaction is expected, how can we make sure that we're actually adding value to it by automating this? How can I say this process? So that's the second center. And then the third center that we have is the Center for Sustainability and Well-being. So it's not just looking at how the industry needs to be sustainable, but looking into how can we make sure that tourism and hospitality will actually support the well-being of everyone involved. And so that includes also residents, for example, because sometimes what happens with tourism is when you have too many tourists coming into a particular destination, for example, residents will actually suffer from overcrowding, from tourist behavior and things like this. So making sure that this is to be avoided going forward. So then lessons, more on the lessons learned for the future. We did a particular study looking at travel futuring. So it's a particular technique where we ask people to imagine how they would like to travel in the future. So we actually asked about 200 people in the UK and in the US. I know it's probably biased towards Western customers, but I'm trying to see if we see patterns in what people kind of imagine traveling will be. And so we gave them a task to imagine that they are traveling in 20 years from now, and to write a story about how they travel, how they get, so where do they go, how did they get there. So we asked them to imagine in the year 2039. We did that in 2019, and it's quite reassuring but also scary at the same time, to be honest with you. The results, the findings from that study is that people will still need travel in the future. So tourism is not going to die, no matter what happens. I think it's just the form of tourism might change. So people imagine obviously travel to be more convenient, because now I think the main deterrent for travel is that sometimes it just takes a lot of effort, right? And it's not very convenient. But one of the things I think that was surprising to us, even though we asked them to imagine about travel, many of them are actually telling stories about their concerns for the environment and basically for humanities in general. So there's a concern, obviously, about climate change, about all the different grand challenges that we're facing now. There's climate change and environmental concerns and rising sea levels and so on, that will then limit not only the destinations that people can travel to, because islands are gonna disappear and things like this, but also the ways that people can travel in the future. And then there's also a lot of concerns about the social aspect of things, the increase in nationalism, for example, at the time, and the political situations here and there that would then also limit the opportunities for people to travel to a particular destination. And then what's interesting to me from that study is the idea that if we don't protect, or if we don't do anything now to protect the Earth, we're going to have to think about an alternative planet to live in. So going to the moon or going somewhere else, which in the hindsight, I think it sounded a little bit off. It's like science fiction and everything, but to be honest, there's lots of truth in it, because and again, this is going back to the idea of having a more sustainable future, and travel in this case is one of the contributors to climate change and other environmental issues and also social issues. And so hopefully then going forward, when we look into how we can create a better travel and tourism industry, we need to seriously think about how we can manage tourism in a more sustainable and responsible way. And so from the point of view of artificial intelligence, because that's my area of research, it is about how we create systems that will help us to, for example, nudge tourists to facilitate them to make choices for more responsible tourism easier. Because if we want to change people's behavior, that's one thing that I learned, having been researching on this area. To change people's behavior, it is very difficult to convince people with ideologies and instill motivation. It is really hard to argue with people's belief. But if we want to change their behavior, we have to make sure that we make the desired behavior easier to do. So for example, there's a lot of controversies around vaccine passport, for example, in the UK. And I did, a team of, I think 3 of us did a study on this. And of course, these are areas that can easily be, how can I say, contentious in the sense that the opinion about this are polarized, right? Public opinion are polarized. There are people who are on it, and then people who are against it, for it and against it. But if we don't really, how can I say, if we don't pay too much attention to how can we change people's view about vaccine passport, and then if we can change people's opinion, then they will take it up, for example. It's actually hard to do that. The easiest way is to make sure that the behavior of adopting the vaccine passport is easier. So for example, making it a default option and people don't question it if it's there. So obviously there are some ethical issues around it, but to me, I think, and also in the school at the University of Surrey now, what we are doing in terms of creating systems in tourism and hospitality is to facilitate people's behavior and also the management of tourism to become more sustainable. So I think I'm kind of using now 45 minutes of the time, and I would like to allow for a discussion. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss and answer as much as I can. And again, apologies for the for not so smooth connection. And I'll probably give Isabel a set of slides to share with everybody at the end.
Thank you, Prof. Very interesting topic that you were talking about. Can everybody hear me? Oke, mungkin ada pertanyaan teman-teman mengenai topik yang tadi sudah dibahas oleh Profesor Iis. Beberapa hal yang saya tangkap tentunya digital transformation to make people as still to make people as a center of it tentunya. Kemudian juga concerns mereka melakukan study ya, future traveling, melihat apakah tourism will still be there in the future. Kemudian bagaimana juga menjadikan tourism lebih convenient nantinya. Kemudian mereka juga mempelajari concerns untuk tourism pada 20 tahun mendatang, terutama di bidang environment and humanity. Apakah climate change akan berpengaruh pada tourism, kemudian pada saat sea level tetap naik, apakah itu juga akan berpengaruh, dan bagaimana manage tourism in a more sustainable and more responsible way. Nah, dari apa yang sudah disampaikan oleh Prof. Iis, mungkin ada pertanyaan, teman-teman boleh chat di Q&A box apabila memang ada pertanyaan.
Sorry, there are two questions here on the chat. Is it okay if I take one up?
Yeah, sure. You can take both.
All right. So yes. Okay. So Liliana Davis, thank you for the question. So first question, the PhD dual degree program. Yes. So we do have a dual degree PhD in collaboration with two universities. One is with Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and the other one we just launched. Actually, it's with Nankai University in China. So the way that we do this dual degree is. With Hong Kong, it's actually a two-way dual degree. So PhD students can start either at Hong Kong first and then come to Surrey, or start at Surrey and go to Hong Kong. And basically, you will have two sets of supervisors. So you have supervisors at Surrey, you have supervisor in Hong Kong. And then depending on where you start, that's going to be your first home university. And then when you go after, for example, after 2 years, and then you go to the other university, and then you will continue your research and you have your viva either at Surrey or in Hong Kong. The requirements are you will need to check admissions, but it's the same as other PhD programs. So I think it's I'm not sure. So there's an IELTS requirements. There's also requirements in terms of your graduation. I think it is merit, if I'm not mistaken. But please do head to the website, and they will have all the requirements there. The dual degree program with LPDP scholarship, unfortunately not at the time. If you get the dual PhD program, you will get scholarship from Hong Kong and from Surrey. So you will get studentship from us. So when you start at Surrey, you will be funded by the university. So the faculty is funding your fee and studentship, and then when you move to Hong Kong will pick that up, and the other way around. You emailed Slava and okay, and apply. Sorry. All right. Okay. So there are so for our PhD program, obviously there are two different discussions here. So one is the admission, and one is perhaps funding, right? So when you can be admitted to the program, but then you have to kind of find ways to fund the program. So the university has different studentship opportunities. So we have the Vice Chancellor Scholarship, for example, that's open to international PhD PhD students. We also have faculty studentship that comes from the school. And so what we do normally is, if we get applicants and we look through applications, We will select top 2, for example, applications to be considered for the school's studentship. And then there is a competitive process for the Vice Chancellor scholarships. And there are also other scholarships, the Shine scholarships and so on. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we have about 60 PhD students now in the school. So every year we provide 2 studentship out of 60. So many of the other PhD programs that we have either fund the program themselves, or they actually have scholarship from their home country. So LPDP, for example, we already have many from Indonesia now coming in with the LPDP scholarship. I think I have personally, I'm supervising 2 LPDP students from Indonesia, and 1 more is coming, I think, in October. I hope that answers the question. Another one from Siska, interested in study about sustainable tourism implementation and what course in Surrey. So I'm not sure if you're looking at undergraduate or postgraduate or PhD. So in terms of, if you're interested in tourism, if you're looking into master's program, that would be international tourism management. And if you're looking at PhD at the PhD level, we are actually offering the degree in hospitality and tourism management. But we are open to different areas of research because our PhD is by research, essentially. So if you're interested in a PhD program, what I suggest you to do first is, depending on your areas of interest, look at the people within the school and try to make a contact with them. Essentially, as I mentioned, we have 3 research centers, and so these are the key priorities for us. So sustainability and well-being, and then competitiveness, and then digital transformation. So these are the 3 centers. And in addition to this, we also have 2 groups. One is looking into gender and entrepreneurship. And so if you're into areas of gender and entrepreneurship and social policy, that's the group that you can probably have a look at who are affiliated with it. So Dr. Albert Kimbu, for example, is in there. And another group is called Human Rights in Major Events. And so this group is looking into, for example, human trafficking or modern slavery in events area. So things like the Olympics and things like this. Right, so hopefully that answers the question. There's a question from Fabrini. The controversy, yes, yeah. Is it possible to close the village for tourists? So this is what I was trying to discuss about, better management of tourism, and there are lots of trade-offs in terms of tourism management. On the one hand, it is how can I say, it is desirable almost for a particular form of tourism to come into a destination. But then there is a point when it becomes more negative than positive. And I think it's a matter of knowing or anticipating what will be the optimum level of development of tourism in a particular area before it tips into that other side of the negative effects. And so for village like Hallstatt, I'm not particularly familiar with the issue. I think probably I've heard the rumor the same way you did. But obviously this needs to be taken into, how can I say, it is not the problem of the village itself. And so authorities, at the municipal or the regional level needs to be able to make sure that how can I say, measures are being taken. So it could be that it's you know, it's a matter of, let's say, putting a threshold, like a maximum number of tourists, for example, to come into the village, and you can do that through pricing, for example, making it a little bit harder for people to come in if you know that too many people are going to be coming in. So making it more exclusive, or it could be curfew, it could be tax. So there are different ways, I think, for governments and also authorities and businesses to deal with this. And then, oh, thank you, Isabel, for that requirements. And then February, yeah, I think so. Postgraduate, yes.
I think you have a question in the Q&A section.
Oh, okay. Let me go there. Okay, metaverse. Yes, I knew that someone is going to talk about this. The physical tourism stakeholders. Yes. Okay, so I have to say, you know, I'm a little bit embarrassed earlier. I'm talking about technology, and then I was cut from the connection. So technology has not been my friend. And also this is an illustration of, I think, you know, when I study technology, but I'm not really 100% advocate that everything needs to be technology related. And there is just, you know, a how can I say, when we talk about virtual, I studied virtual reality as well. I looked into the possibility of how virtual reality will take over tourism, or at least will give, you know, an alternative to tourism. So to me, metaverse and travel in the virtual environment, it's good to provide, how can I say, an alternative to travel, but it's not going to replace travel, unfortunately, or at least fortunately to me. I think there is still that need from, you know, human interaction and being in other places that will not be satisfied via digital means. But to me, it is very useful to replace a portion of travel. So it's not going to replace entirely travel entirely, but it's good to replace a portion of travel. We don't always have to travel. We don't need to travel too often anymore, to be honest with you. And this is, I think, the a good example now that, you know, typically I would need to travel to Jakarta and speak and so on, but now we can do this, you know, assuming that the technology will help. But I think what we need to do with the metaverse and also with virtual environment in general, from the tourism side of things, is making sure that, first of all, it will that we will be able to create the experience that that is, how can I say, not just superficial. You know, and that has been a challenge with virtual reality in the past. For example, when we went into lockdown and suddenly we cannot you know, travel anymore, you know, everyone was kind of saying, oh, finally probably virtual reality will take off now, because people, you know, people stay home and they need virtual, they can do they can travel virtually via virtual reality. And then we actually see, you know, there is a, how can I say, there's attraction that people start, you know, Googling virtual tours and things like this. But I think it happened only the first week of lockdown, and then people lost interest because it's just not the same. So for stakeholders or tourism stakeholders about this, the challenge is one, again, I said we need to make sure that we can create a virtual experience that
that's kind of significant, that it is an experience instead of a substitute to physical experience. And two, and I think it's the biggest challenge, is how can we create experience that sells? There's so far, I think people look at it as an alternative, and people are not willing to actually pay for or at least pay significantly for virtual experience. And I think what we need to think about in the metaverse is this. Right. Next question. Hire tourists come to Bali. Postdoc. Okay, I'll answer the second question first. We do have a visiting scholars scheme. So we welcome whether staff members from or faculty from other universities to if they would like to stay with us and collaborate with staff within the school, and the scheme is typically for a year or less, but if you want to stay more or longer, sorry, then you can renew this, but this is not paid, and so it's a visiting position. Postdoctoral research, there are different areas. For example, if a faculty or a staff within the school got a grant, let's say a research funding, and we will need postdoctoral research associate to work on the project, then we will advertise, and it's going to be a typical postdoctoral research fellowship. But it's typically project based. So there are two different schemes here. One is basically as an employment, and then two as a visiting appointment. Hire tourists to come to Bali in the pandemic situation. It's never, how can I say, it's never a straightforward suggestion, right? One thing for me is safety. Obviously, is the issue, right? So it's a matter of protecting the rest of the residents in Bali, for example, and also too, obviously is the economic aspect of it. As long as I think, as long as the message is clear of what are the necessary measures, that the necessary measures have been implemented, and there is a how can I say, improving consumer confidence that if they are traveling to Bali, that how can I say, that the experience is not going to be affected negatively. I think that's probably the case, and so having the necessary measures in place, and to communicating this to improve customer confidence, perhaps. Next, traveling social network, couch surfing. Yes. We have seen that disruption, obviously, in the past. We were concerned that this is going to change during the pandemic, because people don't want to travel with other people anymore, right? Social distancing and everything else. But I think that's an area that is not going to be mainstream. Obviously, this is a very niche, and we have to be open to this. The majority of consumers will probably not take this up. It's going to be a niche, but I think the platforms. So, for example, with Airbnb, it has been proven that it's a disruption to the industry, and it's going to continue this way, I believe. Sorry. What is next? Digital literacy. Yes. So I was talking about digital dexterity earlier, and digital dexterity is about how ready your employees are, or stakeholders are in adopting technology or working alongside technology. And I guess I was talking about it at the level where stakeholders who are actually actively looking at or actively working on the industry. But digital literacy in this case is perhaps you are referring to not just stakeholders or not just those directly involved in tourism, but also residents. I think the key to this is when I mention artificial intelligence, right? People tend to think about it as if it's something really sophisticated and something alien to us. But actually, we've been working alongside artificial intelligence in platforms that we use every day. So if you have a smartphone, for example, it's already there. But the key, if we are implementing rural tourism, is making sure that when we adopt technology, it should be technology that's familiar to everyone. So I'm sure many, are using mobile phones now, and they know how to use Facebook, for example. And so, some partners that we are working with for research, when they implement applications or systems in their hotels, for example, they try to make sure that the apps will be user-friendly, in the sense that if you know how to do Facebook, you will know how to use the app. So, and going back, for example, the lessons learned from many countries in Africa, for example, in terms of using their mobile phone for payment and things like this, we actually see, a trend where many residents or people are taking this up because it is familiar to them. And so again, the key is create something, create a system, create a platform where you are using platforms that are familiar to everyone. All right, I'm conscious of time because I have another meeting. I will need to go very soon. So I'm going to answer one more. Smart tourism destination. Yes, no, obviously, I'm a proponent for this. Yes, there are many different, how can I say, levels and definition of smart tourism. But yes, so what we need to do is we need to be smarter in the ways that we use data for tourism management. And it depends on the readiness and the technology readiness of the destination. Being smart is not always about having the latest technology. It's about making use or leveraging what you have in terms of data, using the technology that you have to be able to aid in decision making for the destination. So yes, definitely. So unfortunately, I think I will need to go. So thank you very much for having me today, and I apologize again for the glitch in technology, and that always embarrassed me because I'm working on technology. But hopefully that was useful. And if you have any questions about Surrey or the school, I'm sure Isabel will be able to answer these questions as well. And hopefully I will be seeing some of you soon at Surrey in the future. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Prof. Iis. As you really need to leave for your upcoming meeting, you are welcome to leave the platform. Terima kasih teman-teman untuk waktunya hari ini. Karena memang keterbatasan waktu yang kami miliki, kami harus mengakhiri webinar hari ini. Sekali lagi kami ingatkan, bila Anda tertarik untuk mengetahui lebih lanjut mengenai program yang ditawarkan, atau mengenai admission, mengenai studentship, mengenai scholarship, maka kami anjurkan Anda untuk mendaftarkan diri Anda di link yang sudah disediakan di acara One-on-One with University of Surrey. pada hari Selasa tanggal 8 Maret di 2022 dari jam 3 sampai dengan jam 4.30. Oke, teman-teman, apabila belum mendapatkan link yang tadi sudah ditaruh di chat box, boleh juga hubungi counselor Anda di AECC Global, maka mereka akan mendaftarkan Anda untuk mengikuti one-on-one sesi dengan University of Surrey pada tanggal 8 Maret dari jam 3 onwards. Oke. Demikianlah acara kita pada sore hari ini. Saya atas nama AECC Global dan juga Isabel dari University of Surrey mengucapkan banyak terima kasih untuk kehadiran teman-teman semuanya. Mungkin any last word from you, Isabel, for our AECC Global friends?
All right, thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to AECC and they'll pass it over to me. And if you want to ask more questions, I'll be at the 8 March event, so do sign up for that. See you all.
Thank you, Isabel. Teman-teman, terima kasih. Stay safe and take care for the rest of the day.